It was 14 years in the making, but the federal government believes its new copyright bill strikes the right balance between consumers and content creators. But the proposed legislation still has many detractors. Libraries and independent musicians have expressed concerns about provisions dealing with so-called digital locks for copy protection. Joining us from Ottawa to walk us through the Copyright Modernization Act is Jeremy deBeer. He is a law professor at the University of Ottawa. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
This is a very dense, very technical subject. So I wanted to ask you, first of all, if you can just kind of walk us through the broad thrusts of the bill. How does it change things for the average Canadian compared to what the status quo was, or I guess is, before this passes?
Great question. Well, there's a lot on this bill. There's a little bit of something for everyone and everything for no one. About the only stakeholder group that really got everything they were looking for were content distributors advocating for protection for digital locks. So that's the biggest practical impact for consumers. Now, a digital lock is any technological protection measure that can be used to control how a person accesses or uses digital content. So you can think about geofencing a consumer out of a particular audio or video stream on Pandora or Hulu or the US Netflix account. Or you can think of locking down the content on a DVD or a Blu-ray, or you can think essentially of digitally handcuffing a consumer to ebooks on the Apple iPad as opposed to the Amazon Kindle or the RIM Playbook. So these types of controls are very powerful, and they enable content distributors to really set the terms and conditions of access and use. So that's arguably good for those distributors, but it creates some challenges for consumers and students, librarians, and a variety of other interest groups.
Isn't the trend away from this kind of digital locking? If I think about the moves Apple has made in the US, where they removed digital right management from the tunes because it just became such a pain in the butt to work with, it actually had consumers saying, I don't want to do it anymore. So at the same time that the market's moving away from this idiot law comes in. This doesn't sound like good law to me at all.
It is a little bit backwards, Kevin. You're right. Now, the interesting thing about the music industry dropping digital locks on their technology is that was already several years ago. But we do see technological protection measures still being used. And you can think of ebooks or Blu-rays or streaming content on the internet. So this is still a very real problem. The supposition in the legislation is that the market will reject these tools if consumers don't want them. But the truth of the matter is, I think that this type of legislation really reinforces that as a viable business model.
So just to get back to the technical aspect of that, we've all heard stories of single mothers being prosecuted for file sharing, and parents regularly copy movie DVDs, give them to their children to make sure that the original wasn't broken, things like that. If there's a digital lock on it, you actually physically cannot do that. Is there a danger of people accidentally breaking the law?
Well, the balance in this legislation is that the government has made it, on one hand, legal to do these kinds of common sense and commonplace activities, like to shift your DVD from the physical disc to your laptop, or to move songs to your phone or your iPod. So that's actually legal now in the bill, and currently it's a gray area. So the bill would legalize that. But what it gives you with one hand, it takes away with the other by saying none of that applies if there's a digital lock, and in essence, the contract and the technologies trump whatever other rights you might have had in the legislation.
I'm not strong on the technical side, I'll admit it right now, but I guess my question is, will I know if there's a digital lock on something that I'm using in my home?
Yeah, you'll get an error message, usually prefaced by a "we're sorry" on the computer screen, but this content's not available in your area, or else some annoying sound on your desktop, indicating that you really just can't copy content from one place to another. So you'll know because you'll be locked out. You'll be technologically locked out of doing something. And what this bill will do is it'll change that from merely being inconvenient to being illegal.
Can you give us a time schedule on when this madness is going to be put in place, and when would I see it as a consumer?
Soon. The key thing that's changed between now and the previous 3 times that the Government of Canada has tabled copyright reform legislation is the political environment. So we're in a majority government position right now, and we have every indication that this is on the fast track. That process has been expedited because this bill is the exact same bill that was introduced last time. That means they can carry over all of the momentum from previous parliamentary committee hearings and really just move forward, tidying up a few things. They say that there will be some technical fix, and I can tell you as a lawyer that the devil is always in the details of the technical fix, so stay tuned for that. But the intent is to have this new law in place and in effect by the new year.
Something I didn't know that I learned today is that when you buy a package of blank CDs, a portion of what you pay actually goes to independent musicians. So presumably there should be some revenue loss in all of this for them as well.
Well, it goes to all kinds of musicians, actually, not just independent musicians. It goes to record companies and performers and songwriters. The Conservatives said in their election platform years ago that they would actually phase that out. There have been calls to expand this to iPods and presumably phones or laptops or other kinds of devices. The Conservative has said categorically that they're not going to expand this new iPod tax. So we're not going to see that kind of an amendment. But what is left out of this bill is actually any kind of real support for Canadian creators, individual artists or authors or songwriters or filmmakers really don't have a lot to be happy about in this bill. It primarily protects content distributors. And so we've seen some criticism coming from creative industries.
All right, interesting to see how it plays out. Jeremy deBeer,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.